Guys, did you see how Van Dijk pretended to help Richarlison after fouling him? Psych, that's exactly what we did to Spurs. Let them have their moment in the first leg, only to come back and dismantle them with a 4-0 win at Anfield to book our spot in the EFL Cup final. Funny, isn't it? And that's exactly what we're diving into today. From a slow start where we didn't look too threatening, to completely running Spurs off the pitch, all without even hitting top gear. So if you missed last night's game or just want a deep dive into what we did right, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons. Now let's jump straight into it. This video is sponsored by Clothing. Clothing is a Liverpool clothing site owned by match-going fans. Each design is limited edition and is perfect to wear on a match day, on the terraces at Anfield, down your local, or cozy in the comfort of your own home. As stated, each design is limited edition, and if a product is showing out of stock, they will not be restocking the item, so if you have your eye on something, grab it fast. Lastly, Clothing wants fellow Reds to be 100% satisfied with their orders, so if there is a reason you're not happy, they will refund you with no questions asked. Head over to clothing.com or down into the link in the description to get all of your Liverpool merchandise. Anyway, let's get back into today's video. First, as always, let's go through our starting lineup. Kelleher was back in goal, with Robertson, Van Dijk, Konate and Bradley forming the back line. The midfield had one change. Curtis Jones started ahead of McAllister, joining Szoboszlai and Gravenberch. Up front, Darwin Núñez returned to lead the attack, flanked by Cody Gakpo and Mo Salah. So, how did we start the game slow yet still go on to win so comfortably, even with the pressure of being 1-0 down from the first leg? No, the answer isn't just because it's Spurs. Let's break it down. Take a look at how Spurs set up defensively. They stuck to their usual 4-1-4-1 shape. Their midfielders closely tracked us. Bentancur on Szoboszlai, Bissouma on Jones, and Sarr on Gravenberch. Meanwhile, their wide players took turns pressing our fullbacks. This made it difficult for us to progress the ball through the thirds, especially through the middle. Every time we tried to play through central areas, Spurs created an overload by having their wide players drop deep, making it even harder to break through. Here you can see the same thing happening again, but this time Richarlison dropped deep to create the overload and further squeezed the space in the middle. Both situations we just showed you led to turnovers, with Spurs winning the ball back and looking to hit us on the counter. Luckily they couldn't do any real damage. So how did we deal with this? How did we manage to break through their defence? Well, let's start with our captain fantastic, Virgil van Dijk. Whether he was deep in our half or pushing up into Spurs half, free or under pressure, using his right or left foot, Van Dijk kept picking out Salah and Gakpo with pinpoint diagonal balls over the top into wide areas. This allowed us to bypass Spurs' defensive block and avoid their central pressing traps. From there, our wide players had the freedom to create danger, like Gakpo's cross to Darwin or Salah's through ball for Szoboszlai's offside goal. The second way we manipulated Spurs' defensive block was through our fullbacks. Bradley's aggressive runs into the right half space pinned their left back, creating room for Salah to drop deeper and receive the ball out wide. Then, when Bradley reset into the build-up, we maintained an asymmetrical structure, ensuring numerical superiority on the right. This forced Spurs' block to shift toward that side, isolating the left and giving Jones more space to operate. The same applied to Robertson. His slightly more advanced positioning compared to Bradley added to this asymmetry, giving us an extra forward outlet and further disrupting Spurs' defensive shape, something clearly reflected in our passing map. This became even more effective with Curtis Jones constantly drifting from central areas to the left, peeling off his marker and providing a passing option for the backline. Now back to Bradley. The boy's knack for spotting space and attacking it with speed and intent was the reason behind our third goal. After we regained possession in our own half, he popped up out of nowhere in the final third to set up Szoboszlai's goal. The 21-year-old fullback put in yet another impressive performance, winning 7 of his 9 duels, his only aerial battle, completing 80% of his passes, and successfully pulling off 3 dribbles out of 4. It's safe to say that every time Slot has trusted Bradley with minutes, he's delivered. That's why we're confident this kid has a bright future at the club. Now, onto the third key factor in how we disrupted Spurs' shape and created danger, our out-of-possession approach. Before our opening goal, you can see here how our momentum dropped slightly compared to the earlier stages. That's because we gave Spurs a bit more time on the ball, but not without a plan. By doing so, we set traps for them during their build-up phase. Let us guide you through it. Here you can see Salah and Darwin pressing Spurs centre-backs, while our midfielders hold their positions instead of covering the middle. Gakpo steps up to press Gray, and since we know Spurs like to invert their fullbacks into midfield, he makes sure Gray stays in his shadow cover. With Jones also covering that same zone, the passing lane was cut off, leading to an interception. From there, we instantly turned defence into attack, putting Mo Salah in a dangerous position to whip in a cross. And that brings us to our first goal of the game, a perfect example of the work we put in out of possession, especially when defending transitions after losing the ball. Seconds after giving it away, you can see how everyone immediately rushes back to win it, with Szoboszlai leading the charge. His pressure forces Spurs into a misplaced pass, but that's not the only reason we scored. It all comes down to our rest attack approach. In fact, this has been a recurring pattern in our games. We've scored from similar situations before, like in the 6-3 win against Spurs, the West Ham game, the Lille match, and many others. Let us show you exactly what we mean. Watch Salah's positioning while we were chasing the ball. He wasn't making any effort to track back. Instead, he held his ground. You might think this was similar to both Darwin and Gakpo, right? Well, not quite. While they were starting to track back, Darwin to a lesser extent, Salah did the exact opposite. That's because we often use Salah as our gambler, the one player we sacrifice out of possession, defending with just 9 outfield players. It's a high-risk, high-reward approach, and so far the rewards have far outweighed the risks. The moment Spurs played the wrong pass, Salah immediately drifted wide to create separation from his marker, while Darwin and Gakpo tracked back into position. Crucially, Darwin occupied both centre-backs, leaving Salah and Gakpo in 1-versus-1 situations against their markers. From there, a beautiful cross from Mo found its way to Gakpo, who, by the way, absolutely loves scoring at Anfield. He made no mistake, opening the scoring and making the game so much easier for us, but that wasn't the only time our out-of-possession approach paid off. In fact, it was the exact same strategy, forcing Spurs into errors that led to our second goal, the penalty won by Darwin Núñez. It all started with Szoboszlai pressing Spurs centre-back aggressively, while Gravenberch stayed tight on their pivot. The moment the pass was played, Gravenberch was ready. He stepped in, intercepted it cleanly, and immediately turned defence into attack. Then, with one delicate touch, Salah took the ball away from his marker before slipping it perfectly into Darwin's path, leading to the penalty. And speaking of Darwin, how good was he last night? That was arguably his best performance in a while. He finished the game with 3 key passes, won 6 out of 10 duels, and even made 4 clearances. He put in an incredible shift both on and off the ball, constantly moving to create space for his teammates, while also pinning back Spurs defenders. His movement allowed the likes of Jones and Szoboszlai to receive the ball in dangerous areas without pressure. A well-deserved win, even though it felt like we never really had to step on the gas. And with Plymouth coming up in the FA Cup this weekend, the players should get a chance to recharge, especially with some likely rotations for that game. The season is still long, but securing a spot at Wembley already to defend our title is a huge step in the right direction under Slot. People wrote us off before the season even began, and now look at us, favourites for the league, top of our Champions League group, and still alive in both domestic cups. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. If we take the rest of the campaign one game at a time, the titles will come naturally. Now, we want to hear from you. What did you think of our performance? Were you confident we'd turn things around against Spurs? Who was your man of the match? And, most importantly, should Slot go for heavy rotation in the upcoming FA Cup game? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons for more content.